Okay, so this is the second of the replays I'm going to show you in Medieval 1212, and this one's a little bit different. There's a little bit more about the mechanics of what's going on in this mod in this particular replay, so let's go ahead and start it up. I am playing as the Duchy of Brabant, and my opponent is playing as the Kingdom of Sicily. This map's a little interesting. I start off with a bit of a hill advantage, it must be said. So the onus is really on me to move forward. Looks like the enemy's got a bombard as well. A lot of skirmishers from the enemy. But we'll go over the army composition when the match actually starts. So then, we have the army compositions. Now first thing to note, you'll notice that I have got considerably less men than him. I've got around 600 less, just over 600 in fact. And that says a lot about the quality of our army in terms of individual units. Regardless, let's go over my army first of all. Now, I have 4 units of crossbow sergeants, high period. This is the lowest tier unit I have in my army. Everything else I have in my army is either an artillery piece or is a late period unit. And that's something that I will get onto later in terms of relative power. The high period units, though, I picked these guys because as crossbows go, you know, the missile damage is what I was looking for from these guys, not necessarily their ability to fight in melee, nor their survivability, so I thought I could save some money here and spend the money elsewhere in my army. I have a catapult, naturally. I have 3 units of the men-at-arms polearms. Let's get a closer look at these guys. They look very cool as well. Again, I love the fact that all the units look different from faction to faction. This is technically the same unit that England have, but the look of them is very different indeed. Now, the other infantry that I have are 4 units of late period Pavie spearmen, and we'll get onto them a little later on as well when the battle starts, but very tough to kill indeed. And then I have units of cav. I have the Duke of Brabant, late period, and I also have some late period Brabantian knights, and they look very, very nice indeed. So I have a relatively small army, but I do have the hill advantage, and I have the quality advantage, I fear. Moving on to my opponent, Kingdom of Sicily, he has a bombard, naturally, so he has a better piece of siege equipment, at least in theory, than I have. He has some units of arcieri. I think that, again, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but these guys are late period archers, so they have some nice armor. They will be difficult to kill in the skirmish. He also, however, has a lot of peasant archers. And in stark contrast, these guys are pretty trash indeed. They are going to be able to kill basically none of my units, so it was really kind of a waste of bringing them along. He does, however, have some foot condottieri. These guys are significantly better. They will be able to engage my men, certainly. He too has some late period Lancia Sargente. That's wrong as well, but nonetheless, these are late period spears, similar in many ways to my late period Pavis. And again, in stark contrast, he's brought some armed peasants. Now, as far as padding out your line goes, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They can take some shots and they can sort of cushion your advance, I suppose, particularly if you need to go up the hill. Although I will say that I will advance down the hill in this case. I'm not an asshole. We also have some late period Spadaccini. These are basically late period sergeants. Again, this is a unit which will be able to go toe to toe with my infantry force. He has some... Right, okay. Consigliere... He has some guardsmen. I'll try and get the pronunciation down in a later date, but this is a high period unit, it looks like, based on the uniforms. They're not completely without armor, but they are also tier 2. They are, you know, not bad, I suppose, but they're not really going to be able to get too much done against my spears, which is the main problem he's going to have. He has some high period lancers as well. He also has some pikemen, and these guys are, again, the Piccieri. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I believe, actually, these guys are late period units looking at their armor. They're tier 3 as well. So these guys will actually be pretty handy in a melee fight, not something I want to do. Again, another late period lancer. More peasant archers. He has some balencing crossbows, and then his cav, which is the late period King of Sicily. I believe this is him. Again, you know, maybe not standing out quite so much, but, you know, he's functional. And he also has a lot of condottieri. Mounted condottieri. Again, similar to the last battle, I'm playing against the same guy here, and my real advice to him is he needs to be more organised with how his army is laid out. He's not really organised his pick at all. He's just picked anything he can afford, and it's led to a very patchwork type of army. Nonetheless, we will get this started, and I will cut to the point when the battle begins. Okay, so the skirmish has begun. His peasant archers have begun attacking my crossbow sergeant. My catapult is also getting into a good position to fire. Sending forward my crossbows first, mainly because they're not really in any danger of being charged by the cav, because the cav is very far away. And I'm going to win this skirmish pretty handily. Really, his late period archers are the only units which could potentially cause a bit of damage to me, but them on their own is not going to be enough, and he's also sent them way out over here, so he's going to lose the skirmish very handily indeed. I also have my late period Paviste spearmen just in behind, so I can pull back my crossbows if I need to and hold on this hill. His archers are already breaking. That's the problem with peasant archers, they do next to no damage and they will break very easily. I have my polearm men-at-arms back here protecting my catapult, because his cav is, you know, reasonably over there. I have my Brabantian knights over here, ready for the charge, which will come in eventually. And his general's over here, so I've got my general and another unit of Brabantian knights over here. Looking at his advance, it's kind of a bit all over the place, because he's relying on his peasants to try and whittle down the line, and he also has his armed peasants. He's trying to waste my ammunition, which is fine. You know, it's not a bad tactic. But he also has some decent units mixed in here as well, which are going to be taking a lot of damage. And ultimately, all it's doing is bringing the man count back into my favour a little bit. The only kills he's really got are with his bombard, which, you know, fair enough. Like, he's going to be killing a few of my crossbows with the bombard, but he'd be much better off going for the spears, which he is now doing. And he's now also advancing, he's sort of converging, trying to overwhelm, which is a worthwhile tactic considering he has got the manpower advantage still. And he has some decent units mixed in there as well. He's got some late period pikes, he's got some late period spears, and swordsmen. These units that he's got mixed in with his peasants are not pushovers, but he's advancing, and now I will deploy something which is pretty overpowered indeed with my Paviste spearmen. At least I will do as soon as he advances. I love the shields of the Paviste spears. Unfortunately, it's also what makes them so overpowered. I'm also bringing my men-at-arms polearms. He's charging in some condottieri, but I will get a counter-charge off of the Brabantian knights. Not really a good idea while I've got polearms, and this is it. I'm forming square with late period Pavistes. They won't get a lot of kills like this, but they will be extremely tough to kill. They do leave a lot of gaps naturally, but that's what the men-at-arms polearms are for. The cav engagement has started. He has charged into my Brabantian knights with his condottieri. I, however, was able to push over some polearm men-at-arms over here, so this should mean that this fight will be in my favour unless he sends over some additional support. He is shooting them, but again, it's only with stuff like peasant archers. He has got some balencing. I'm charging in. This was a poor engagement from him. He's got the King of Naples, late period. That's a unit I must have missed, but that's not his general either. So again, very questionable picks here. And he sent them in on their own just to try and kill these Brabantian knights and my general. It's not going to work. They are very easily going to be able to deal with that on their own. He should have just used the King of Naples and some spears to prevent me from being able to charge over here. He shouldn't have been that aggressive. The squares, they're going to hold in the middle. I have also charged in some of my men-at-arms polearms. They will be the ones doing the damage against the foot condottieri, while the Paviste spears just sort of hold the line. Only 3 of them have died from the foot condottieri so far, and that's one of the best units you can use against them. That's a worthwhile tactic. Trying to destroy the Paviste squares with a bombard and with your skirmishers. You're not really going to be able to do it with just your... As good as his melee infantry are, he's not going to be able to smash through the Paviste squares. Going back over here, he's charged in his balencing late. Again, these are very questionable decisions indeed. I know he was trying to sort of stop these men-at-arms from just doing what they will, but that was the wrong unit to do it with. He has charged in some spears, which will do some pretty significant damage to my Brabantian knights. So that was a pretty good move. They're high period, so they're going to be very cost effective indeed. He's got more Brabantian knights over here, but this is an engagement that he's eventually going to lose because all of it is exposed to my crossbows. And now I won that cav engagement over there, and I'm going to be able to smash his lines to pieces with a unit of Brabantian knights. Yeah, his foot condottieri are going to break. This unit of guardsmen is also going to break very quickly. Sandwiched in between the Brabantian knights and the Paviste spears. He sent in his king, his general. which, you know, he got a decent charge off on my Brabantian Knights, but all this is going to do is leave him vulnerable to my now free foot men-at-arms with pole arms. And as soon as he loses his general, the enemy general has died. This battle is going to be all mine. His morale is going to waver. He's been hammering this Pavis unit with cannon fire, with arrow fire, and they've only lost 19 men. That's ridiculous. My king is now also free. My crossbows over here are free to try and engage these spears. Over here, he's doing a decent job actually of sort of whittling down my Brabantian knights. But again, a lot of that's down to friendly fire because I'm willing to sort of fire my crossbow bolts in over here to kill his spears. Now they're not wavering. Again, this engagement is being won by my forces, and yeah, I have won every engagement on this front, and I shouldn't really have won the central engagement. He had more troops in there, and he had some quality troops in there as well, but this is the power of the square formation. And I would suggest that square formation is pretty horrendously overpowered, especially when you have late period Pavis spearmen like I have. My king is going to get a charge off onto the backs of these late period spear sergeants. There we go. You can see my king there with the plume. I believe that's him. Oh no, there's another unit with a plume. My king is in this fight though. Do a decent amount of damage to those heavily armoured Lancer sergeants. Yep, and now his forces are just breaking because my Brabantian knights are able to recharge his forces and they won't be able to kill my Pavis and my men-at-arms. My catapult is now further forwards, but it doesn't really need to fire at this point. There's no real big targets to go after. He did manage to break one of my Brabantian knights with his condottieri, and a bit of friendly fire, I must say, was to do the culprit there. But my men-at-arms are beating his ballistariae in melee, and my other Brabantian knights will easily be able to beat his condottieri when they're supported by crossbow fire. And also my other unit of Brabantian knights is coming over here to get the surround off, finish them off. Yeah, he's also formed square with his spear sergeants, but it's really too late for that. And also I have the advantage of having a lot of crossbows able to fire into that square. His late period pikes are also lagging far too far behind the fight to really be any use at all. But yes, and this is really also a lesson in how strong late period units can be and how quality is really the important thing. A decisive victory here. And I don't know, like the rules really are hard to say. Like I would say square is overpowered to the point where you should probably not use it at this point. As cool as it looks to see Pavis in square, I would say it's not really balanced as such. And also, like, you know, his cav was massacred by mine. 200 kills in that Brabantian Knights. That was the rear charging unit that I was using. Decent kills for my crossbows. You know, his archers got some kills against my crossbows because they're high period. They probably didn't get any kills against my late period units, to be honest. His late period archers didn't do much either. His late period ballistariae probably got a volley off before charging into my men-at-arms, which again was a very strange decision indeed. Really not a lot of kills across the board here. And this really, the hill and the square formation was always going to mean that I was going to really run roughshod over his army. Yeah, square formation, I would say, probably a good idea to ban it. Probably a good idea to place a limit on how many late period units you're allowed to use, unless you're just two factions with a lot of late period units and you decide to use all of that. Because it seems like the Central Europeans have got a lot of late period units, and yet some factions have hardly any. So it might be a good idea to place a cap on the amount of late period units you use if you intend to play multiplayer in this, in its current build anyway. I'm sure that the balancing will get a little bit better as it goes along. His bombard didn't get enough kills either, really. So yeah, that was a quick battle, much more decisive battle than the last one, but it was really just a little hint pointer here about how strong the square formation is. And I hope to see you for the future replays that I will do.